Good morning. This is Mrs. King, and we're going to have our first recorded math lesson today. And what you need for this math lesson is this Bridges student book. So your actual student book has a red dot on it, a red dot. So I should probably put a red dot on mine, but make sure it's the student book, second edition student book. And that was in your white tub that I gave you last week. So we're going to look at something called school supplies. We're doing Module 1, Session 1 to get started here, to do a little bit reviewing about multiplication strategies. So it says the students in Mrs. Carter's class brought in their school supplies for the year. They brought in paper and pencils, markers and crayons, glue, folders, and more. Help them figure out how many of each item they have. For each problem, show your thinking with numbers, sketches, or words, then write an equation that represents your work, okay? So we're looking at school supplies, and we're going to be writing equations. So there are 32 students in Mrs. Carter's class. So I'm going to circle that because I think 32 is a number that I'm going to need. Each student brought in 2 glue sticks. I'm going to remind myself 2 glue sticks, so I'm going to underline that. How many glue sticks is that in all? So I want you to think to yourself, because normally we would ask a partner or talk to a partner about this, but we're going to have to be self-motivated at home and kind of think about how we would solve this problem. And I'm sure there's lots of different ways that you might think about solving this. So think in your head, what would be the first thing that would come to mind with how many glue sticks in all, if I know that each student brought in 2 glue sticks and there's 32 students in the class? Well, if I'm going to think about this, I know 2, I can double because 2 is doubling. So I could do 32 plus 32. I could double 32. I could think about 3 plus 3 equals 6, and 2 plus 2 equals 4. But they want me to write one equation for this. So I'm going to think about something here, and I'm going to think I like to do multiplication. So I'm going to do 32 times 2, because I know multiplication means I'm going to make more, and then I know I'm going to double 32. So to think of my answer, I might just know that 32 times 2 is 64. Or I could think about it this way, where I might do 3 times 2 equals 6, and 2 times 2 equals 4. Either way, I take the 6 and the 4, and I know that there are 64 glue sticks. And I'm going to make sure I label my answer so I know what I'm doing. I know it's glue sticks that we're looking for. Okay, so 64 glue sticks. Now for problem B, it says if each student brought in 2 glue sticks, there are blank times as many glue sticks as students in Mrs. Carter's class. So I'm going to think about that. If each student brought in 2 glue sticks, basically there's 2 groups of 32. 2 groups of 32, which means that there are 2 times as many glue sticks, because 64 equals 2 times 32. Okay. Now, number 2 says in Mrs. Carter's classroom, students sit in table groups. There are 4 students. So I'm going to circle 4. There are 4 students at each table. And each of the 4 students, I'm going to grab another pen, each of the 4 students at table G brought in 8 markers. 8 markers. How many markers total did the students at table G bring? Well, I'm going to think about this. There are 4 students, and they each brought 8 markers. So I know there are 4 groups, 4 students at each table, and each of the 4 students brought in 8 markers. So 4 groups of 8, which would be 4 times 8, which equals 32. And I know I'm talking about markers. I'm going to do that. Okay. So I could also think about, if I'm not quite sure what 4 times 8 is, I could think about 2 times 16, or 2 times 8. Sorry, 2 times 8. each equals 16, and then I could do 16 plus 16 to equal 32. Okay, so I could think about it that way if I'm not quite sure what 4 times 8 is. So if each of the 4 students at table G brought in 8 markers, there are 4 times as many markers as students, because 32 is 8 times as many as 4. Okay, now I want you to practice a little bit on your own. So in your student book, there is, if you looked at page 1 here, right here in your student book, it says more school supplies. So if you could get out that now, you can pause the video and open this up now, which would be great. So it says, help Mrs. Carter's students figure out how many of each supply they have. For each problem, show your thinking with numbers, sketches, or words. Then write an equation that represents your work. So similar to what we just did with this page, okay? So when it says to show your thinking with numbers, sketches, or words, basically what I did up here, 32 plus 32, double 32, 3 plus 3 equals 6, that's showing your work with numbers. Now, you could, if you wanted to, make groups of numbers or groups of pictures to show your thinking as well. So let's look at the 4 students at table G. Each brought in 6 pencils. So there's 4 students and they each brought in 6 pencils. How many pencils are at table G? So if I wanted to draw this in pictures, I could do, they each brought in 6 pencils. So I could do 4 groups here. And I could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that would show my groupings as a picture. Okay. And then I know that my equation is going to be 6 times 4 or 4 times 6. And I know in my head that that is 24 pencils. Now, if I didn't know how to do that in my head, I would just count the pencils in my picture. Okay, this is reciprocal, 6 times 4 and 4 times 6. Those will always be the same answer, no matter how you put the order of the numbers. The 4 students, let's do number 2. The 4 students at table E each brought in a box of 12 crayons. How many crayons are at table E? So I'm looking at how many crayons are at table E. So again, I could draw pictures, or I could think about my work. If each student at table E each brought in 12 crayons, I could think about, I could maybe double this. I could do 2 times 12 equals 24, and 24 plus 24 equals 48. I could think about that because I know that that's what this is kind of asking me. But I could also do 4 times 12 or 12 times 4 to equal 48, because I'm thinking about 2's because I know 2's. Those are easy. I can skip counting 2's and it makes it much easier than 4's. So 48 crayons is my answer. Now, number 3 says the 4 students at table B and the 4 students at table D each brought in 12 pens. How many pens do tables B and D have in all? So I'm looking at how many in all. So to do this, I'm going to think about, okay, 4 students at table D each brought in 12 pens, okay? And 4 students at B and the 4 students at table D each brought in 12 pens. So I'm going to do 4 times 12. I'm going to do parentheses around this, plus 4 times 12, because I've got 2 sets. I've got table B and I've got table D, okay? And I know 4 times 12 is 48 because I figured that over here. And 4 times 12 is 48. So when I add those all together, it's 96 pencils. The reason we put in parentheses is so that we know to do the multiplication first. Okay, parentheses help us tell us what we do first. Okay, I could also think about this as 4 plus 4 times 12 equals 96. So I would do 8 times 12 equals 96. So if I'm good at my eights tables, then I would know that's 96. Okay. Could also do 8 times 12 equals 96. So lots of different ways to do that. Now here's a challenge. The students at table C brought in a total of twice as many pens as the students at table B and D put together. How many pens did the students at table C bring? So I'm going to let you do that one on your own. Okay, so you're going to do number 4. And then for the lesson today, you're going to do the equations for page 2, which says how many pencils. Not all of Mrs. Carter's students brought in the same number of pencils to use for the school year. Help the students figure out how many pencils, so we're looking at pencils, the class has. For each problem, show your thinking with numbers, sketches, or words, then write an equation that represents your work. So you have 4 problems, like we just did in the last 2 pages, and then some review of multiplication down here. You're going to keep these pages in your book, and next week when we have the turn-in days on Monday and Tuesday, you'll rip those pages out and turn them into me next week so I can take a look at your work. Okay, thanks for tuning in to our math lesson today, and I look forward to seeing your work in your student book.